right, so the first of the wild game has rolled into the butcher shop. I don't do a ton of wild game. I primarily harvest beef. They're kind of my favorite thing to do. I do hogs, only for specific farmers that I really enjoy working with, but primarily beef. I used to get into a lot more wild game. I just don't have the time now. I think I found, what you're the best at and the fastest at, and wild game is kind of a season where you almost need to completely shut down processing any other animal and just do wild game. And my facility is really not set up like that. And hopefully down the line, I'll be able to show you guys some of my friends in the butcher industry that have really phenomenal deer setups and how they make really good money this time of year, and they shut down their other stuff. So hopefully sometime we'll go take a tour of like St. Joe's Meat Locker. They have a phenomenal setup as well. And some really great meat lockers in Wisconsin. Hopefully we'll get to tour. But this is an elk that came overnight from Colorado yesterday. Most of my hunters that I do work with or tell that I will usually harvest their elk and they're on the road the next day with it. Otherwise, they're spending thousands of dollars leaving it in the state and getting it processed at meat lockers out there that I wouldn't say price gouge, but I mean, they're there to make the money, and it is the industry in that area. So a lot of my hunters will pack them on ice, throw them in their trailers, and they'll hightail it here in the middle of the night. Luckily, this hunting season, we've had really great weather. Average outside is about 40 degrees, which is the same temp as my carcass cooler, so it's been great hauling weather for food safety and stability of getting an elk across state lines. This is a bull elk that I'm going to bone out here quick, and we'll probably run across a pair of testicles in here because they actually have to keep the appendage attached and prove what animal they are crossing state lines with if they do happen to get pulled over by the DNR or an inspector. So I'm just going to go ahead and start deboning. Big bull elk. I didn't even ask him what size this was. It's a nice one, though. A lot of times my wild game will come from out west, and it'll be really dirty because they field dress it right away. Therefore, I don't take a lot from people I don't know for food safety reasons. This happens to be my taxidermist elk, so I'm always bartering him with my husband's deer or a fancy skull I get in here on a beef that might be a longhorn or a Highlander. We're always going back and forth bartering, so that's how I got suckered into it. So most of them field dress them in these socks. If I can keep them, they wash up super nice and you can use them again for your next hunt. So the guys that were on this hunt are all professional marksmen, taxidermy guys. So the meat's super clean and it's really a butcher's dream. You can see here's this is the front. This is the front shoulder of the elk, front left shoulder. So you can kind of see where there was some wound damage where he shot him. This bruising stuff I'll cut off. You don't want to mix this in with your meat. Not that it would probably be bad. It might have a little different flavor to it. It's definitely doing more irony. Granted, elk bulls are a little bit out of rut. I can still taste it. They're not my most favorite. I would take a cow over a bull when it comes to elk. Bone structure layout is similar to a deer. A white-tailed deer, just bigger concept. They actually got lucky on a ranch, and there was a pile of elk sitting there, and they went and happened to run into the ranch manager, and he's like, go get them right now. ranchers out west are huge fans of elk. They're a great agritourism and cash flow resource for their ranches. Elk are considered a huge hindrance. When I worked on the Galt Ranch, one of my very first jobs as this little Midwest farm girl, first being exposed to wild game that was a lot more aggressive than like a white-tailed deer, they will just walk through a 6-strand barbed wire fence and get into a hay pile. So out west, you'll see ranchers constantly have hay piles in all different pastures, depending on if they're running first-time calving heifers to, 3-year-old cows calving for the second time. They'll have hay piles in all these separate areas, so it's easier for feeding throughout a snowstorm in the wintertime, easy access to this. That also brings in the wild game, especially the moose, and really, especially the elk. So one of my first jobs when I worked on the Galt Ranch, which at that point in time, I think Bill was running about 100,000 acres, and I think 4,000 head of beef. He had a whole herd of elk walk through his barbed wire fence, and they eat the bottom row of the hay out, and all the top bales fall over onto the elk. So they're very much a nuisance. Mind you, when those bales fall, either they kill them or they suffocate them because they're stuck under there, and by the time you find them, you've got 30, 40 dead elk and all of your winter hay destroyed, or at least a good chunk of it. So elk are considered a huge nuisance, when in the hunter world, they're a prime hunt. So it's a good trade-off for both the hunter and the rancher out west. And dragging unsalvageable dead elk that have been there for weeks is not a fun gig. So on this elk, I'm just kind of taking, I call it the crusties, the gross stuff off. Anything I wouldn't want ground in my hamburger. Here's also glands. I'm not a huge fan of leaving anything like that on there because it'll probably still have some hormonal smells to it, or can leave that in the meat if you grind it in. So yeah, some nice muscle chunk. If you're doing deer, whitetail in the area here, and I'll hopefully get a whitetail in here at some point in time. It's hunting season this weekend in Minnesota, so it's going to be madhouse. My favorite thing to do, I'm not a huge fan of washing carcasses. I like to take a torch to them and torch the hair off of them right away. And then I always wash them last. So if you can torch and burn as much hair as you can off your carcass, you're gonna have really clean, great meat. If you start with water, you have to remember that the hides on elk, deer, moose they're almost like a needle you give your shot self with. So the hair follicle is hollow on the inside and it's long. So it insulates, it repels water, it hides a lot of junk, and you're not going to get it to wash off because it's the job of the hair itself is to repel water and weather elements, right? So go ahead, burn that off. That burn, isn't going to do anything negative to your meat. I mean, unless you sit there and cook your meat, but you're good. I'm one meat locker. Some do, some don't. I'm not a big fan of mixing venison batches, I think, or even elk batches. A lot of time the bigger boys will do it. They have so many orders for mild sticks or so many orders for summer sausage. They'll do a massive batch, which I'm fine with. I think a lot of those lockers are really cautious of how clean the meat is before they mix it. It still blows my mind that people will bring wild game in with in scented garbage bags. Like, that is the #1 thing. And that will wreck your meat. It will destroy it. You will not want to eat it, trust me. And I've had it happen. I have it happen every year. And you should see the guys' faces like, you're kidding me. And honestly, I'm like, how did you not smell it when you opened it? But, so I try to keep my batches. I tell people they need to bring me at least 10 to 15 pounds to make a batch. The more, the merrier. I like 25-pound batches. I can always add more pork or beef to it if you don't have enough trim. Here's another gland. And then this type of stuff. This is all gunshot damage. Oof. Smells like a bull. That pheromone testosterone smell. If you know it and you've smelled it, you know it. You know when you smell it. This is one of those moments where smell-o-vision would be like a really good learning tool. So most of this is external bleeding, capillary damage, bruising, you know, depending on how the animal went down, if they fell, if they were able to walk, you know, a couple hundred yards, or maybe they really, really had to track them. This is actually a super nice bull elk. There's minimal damage. And I know he was able to drop him pretty quick in his tracks, which is always the best kind of harvest for meat quality, animal humaneness. I don't think there's anything worse than a hunter knowing he wounded something and it's still out there. I think last year I had one of my farmer friends was out in the field and he had this gorgeous, gorgeous buck come across the field, and I think he was on like 3 legs. He had a shotgun with him, so he ended up harvesting. He had a tag with him, so he ended up harvesting the buck, brought him into me quick, parked the tractor, and I got into him, and he had arrows grown into his shoulder blades. So this big, tough buck had been wounded for the last couple of years and had survived every wound except for a broken leg. Deer never survive broken legs. They have hollow bones as well, so when they break, they're done. That's why, like, car accidents with deer, you know, you can get the tag from your sheriff when they come on scene, whatnot. It's not my favorite, depending on how you hit it. Did it destroy their gut sac? Did they have, you know, fecal material in their body cavity? Whatever the case may be. So this isn't like the most prettiest bone out I've had, but this is where the gunshot was. So a lot of damage. You might have clean muscle, but it'll have capillary breakage on the other side. I don't even mess with this. I don't want it in my burger, so, you know, I'm not going to put it in his. The shoulder blade bones have a ridge on them, and I will show you that. You gotta get the leg over here. You can kind of see this elk has a ridge on it, just like a white-tailed deer would have, or a muley. If you are out west, a lot of times you can get antelope tags over the counter. If you do and you're new to handling antelope, know that they have an enzyme in their meat that will taint other meat. It'll wreck your other meat. So if you're doing antelope, make sure you're gutting them last or cleaning your knives up super, super good. Make sure your meat does not mix with your elk meat or your whitetail meat or your muley meat. Keep antelope separate. When antelope comes into my meat locker, I handle it completely away from everything else. I don't let it touch the table that I have venison on, because it will taint your meat and your customer will be like, this is horrible. So that's a side note on it. My boss used to call them speed goats out west. So that's what I've always known an antelope to be. It's a speed goat. Which if you think of it, they kind of are. I don't like a lot of tendon. This is like white tendon in here. Beef have this too. My grinder hates it. This is actually in beef, this type of tendon. You can kind of see it here. It's a neck tendon. We make Band-Aids, rubber bands, those types of stretchy things out of this type of tendon. You won't want to eat it because you won't be able to chew it. Your grinder will not like you if you put it through it. A little more tedious. So this is quartered, so he already removed the loin, the tender loins. We're gonna get to those. I think he kept the heart in here, so we'll process the heart. And yeah, otherwise we have 4 quarters, 2 hind rumps and 2 French shoulders. We'll clean this up some more, but you can see the really good ridge there, front leg. Sometimes if you have a really sharp knife and you get to the end of your shoulder blade, I'll show you this. When you get to the end of shoulder blades, or even to like end of rib sections, whether it's a beef, a pig, wild game, whatever, I should cut this thing off. You can see here how easy a sharp knife, actually it's better this way, how easy a sharp knife can take bone off. The shoulder blade turns to cartilage on the top. It's really soft, pliable, and my knife just cut. So there. There's the cut. That bone, if you don't remove it, it will dull your knife blades in your grinders, your plates and blades, plates and knives. Also, you're going to have bone in your hammer, and you're not going to like it because it will not break down enough. You can walk behind me. I'm sure they'll just fast forward through this.
I already did that thinking when I went out there.
Lori hates being on camera. How many pigs is he on?
I think he's only done one.
Oh, did Ben come after milking?
Yeah, he wasn't here right away.
Yeah.
He hasn't hollered for April yet again.
I wonder how big they are.
April said they weren't as big as Andy's, but
I was expecting them.
they're big, she said.
Sometimes when I'm cutting these deer, I always think about the trauma patients I would bring in to my trauma surgeons in the ER. And now I have the utmost respect for them because putting some of this back together is crazy. A lot of this stuff, I call it snot. You'll see it on range buffalo that come in that I've had people hunt Fort Pack up in Montana and bring them back. They'll get res license to go shoot. You can see it's like snot. Sometimes it doesn't matter how sharp of a knife you have, this is still just snot and it's like cutting snot. You remember, these are not farmed animals, they're range, so their diet is very, very different from a domesticated elk would be. So you're not going to see the marbling that you might see in a farmed elk. They're going to have more of a sagey smell to them. They eat a lot more bark, twigs, branches, pine. Making sure you get all the lymph glands out. Lymph glands will add a tang to your meat. You won't want to eat it. I'm not saying you can't. It will just add a funky flavor. Same on beef as well. I always do my best to get them removed. And you'll know them. They look like little jello nodules on beef especially. Nice hunk of meat. We're just going to peel the top muscle off. Not too much to clean up on this. This is residual. This is almost like muscle that was bled on. It might be a little damaged, but I would still grind this. I don't feel like that's something that I would keep out. If you go into some of these meat lockers out west, they're insane. I mean, they are well-oiled machines. This is all they do. They live for hunting season. People fly in special to work. The community comes together because the hunts are moving in. And there's a lot of disposable income that comes to a lot of those small western towns. And that is a lot of times what people live off for the year. So hunting season is a huge commodity, huge agritourism out west, down south, Midwest. So I think we're doing everything in this elk into burger packages. I am going to add a little beef tallow to it, which is the kidney fat that hangs in the belly of a beef. I like beef tallow with elk over pork fat. It's just my personal preference. And he wanted his burger kept lean, so we're going to shoot for like a 90-10. So I'm just going to do that calculation and weight off of what my final trim numbers are. Some of you might be curious what kind of knife I'm using. I'm using a 6-inch boning knife. This is a Victorinox. Victorinox. The other thing we're doing is jerky with this. So some of these larger muscles we'll keep and we'll go ahead, we'll go through them and we'll slice them up, marinate them, and throw them in the pit. And they'll smoke for probably about, I don't know, 7 to 8 hours. Probably not that long because this is a lot leaner than, say, like beef jerky would be. Sorry, we're harvesting some pigs today, if you hear them. Sometimes, if you have hair, let's see if I can do this. If you have hair and you don't have a torch with you and you don't want to dull the blade on your knife, you can peel this piece of skin up and you can kind of work it back with your knife and take all of this kind of dirt and grossness off that basically nobody wants in their meat. You can kind of peel it off. And you're not losing much meat. It's dirty meat, you don't want it. You can always run your hand along the top of the blade here too and find your bone ridge. Follow your knife right along that. Go from there. Okay, so that is my wild game elk tutorial.